There you go, Carol.
Okay, great. Good morning, everybody. I'm Carol Allman-Morton, zooming to you from my car outside an appointment, the Executive Director of the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute at Berkshire Community College. If you'd like to learn more about programming at OLLI at BCC, you can check out our website at berkshireolli.org. We have a number of programs coming up this fall. Be sure to look at the OLLI at BCC calendar of events, again at berkshireolli.org/events. And in particular, I wanted to let folks know about our next Distinguished Speaker Series lecture. It's with Dr. Sarah R. Cohen, Art and Globalism in 18th Century Europe. That's Saturday, September 30th at 3 p.m. in person only at the Berkshire Museum. And that link is in the chat. Also, our fall semester begins next week, and there are still lots of great courses online and in person that have room. You can learn more and register at berkshireolli.org/fall 2023. And now I'm going to gratefully turn things over to Naomi Spatz to get things rolling. And thank you so much, Naomi, for putting this together.
Thank you very much. We all look forward to this. As Carol said, I'm Naomi Spatz, and I've been the moderator, in a sense, of the Berkshire previews for some 8-9 years. And we've had a great season. We had 8 different artistic directors who spoke. 2 were brand new, because we had 2 theaters in the Berkshires that changed hands as far as artistic directors. And so that went on for a few years, and then I had this idea, let's hear from the critics so that they can say what they're looking forward to in the season. And we did that for 2 years, and then the critics say, well, we really should get together after the season to say what we saw. And I thought that was a brilliant idea, and now we've been doing it ever since. And I must say that the critics who are with us today have been very generous. When I sent out the call, will you come to a panel? Usually within 12 hours, everyone has responded and said yes. We are missing one of our loyal panelists, and Barbara Waldinger, who's in New York. Her husband.
Naomi, you froze up.
No sound.
Or picture.
Yeah, she's just frozen. She'll be back, I'm sure. Uh-oh, wait a minute. Did we lose her completely? All right. So who wants to take over? Jeannie, you want to say anything? Anybody want to say anything?
I'll just say thank you for, including me in the panel today. I have seen quite a few things this season, not as many as I would like, because I was involved in doing a show at the beginning of the season, but I'm glad to be here today. Is Naomi back?
Naomi's not back yet, but that's okay. Was she, I'm sorry, because I got another phone call. Were we in the middle of, was she giving everybody's bios? Maybe everybody just
was about
to say a little bit about them. How about if everybody just takes a turn and says a little bit about themselves? Peter, can we start with you? Because you're right up in my top corner.
Sure. I'm Peter Bergman. I publish as J. Peter Bergman. I'm an author. I'm a theater critic. I have been writing theater criticism since the age of 14. I am now no longer anywhere near 14. I'm still getting paid pretty much the same amount I was paid at 14, so I don't recommend this as a career.
So how about Jeff? Jeff, how about you next?
I've been a theater critic for centuries, it seems. I write for the Berkshire Eagle. I had been their arts and entertainment editor for some time. I started working at the Eagle in 1986, and have a graduate degree in theater from the University of Washington in Seattle. Born and raised in New York, and started seeing theater at the age of 5, I guess, when my parents took me.
Oh, and I'm sorry, something happened. I was edited roughly and badly.
Yeah. And it's a cool gig being a theater critic, especially in this neck of the woods. So
well, I know you're all thrilled to be back with a full season, and then Macey Levin, who has been with us through it all. He started out, he had a theater in Long Island. He brought up the theater here. He's been a director, actor, critic, and we're delighted. And he has a number of people in the audience whom he's directed over the years. So that's, and last but certainly not least, Jeannie Woods, who is a newer member of our critics world. She was a professor of theater in the Midwest, came here, was introduced to Kate Kidd, and we all know who she is. And Kate put the network. I met Jeannie. She just recently directed Shakespeare in Schenectady. And what she doesn't see as a critic, she's a volunteer. You can go into any theater and find her. So she has thrown herself into seeing every bit of theater in the Berkshires. And in order to enforce it, she married an actor. So, and then did I say that this year also she went to China to teach for theater for a couple of weeks, which I love the kind of open things of, oh, okay, I just unplugged myself, but that's okay. So with all that, I'd like to get started. I'd like to have an open, free conversation. I would like to be discussing what people have seen, what they loved, what they were excited about, what they were disappointed in. But first, I want to throw out a question which was posed to me last night by some friends at dinner. They really would like to hear from you about the play Faith Healer. They were concerned about the ending, and I'm not sure which of you have reviewed it, but I would like to get your response to it or your reaction to it. Jeff, can we start with you?
I was afraid you were going to do that.
You said it's a hard life, right?
It is, and of all the plays to have to start with, this is not an easy play. No. Excuse me, it's never been an easy play for me to watch. This was a really strong production, it seemed to me. And I'm coasting on only one cup of coffee this morning so far. So it's a play that I think deals with a whole host of unsettling issues in many ways. The truth, what is the truth? What is the truth of the lives of these three people and how they interact with each other? There's been a lot of discussion about the ending of the play. My feeling is that he, he's talking to us, he's facing his own death at the end, it feels to me. He moves toward his death in that encounter in the yard outside the tavern, and it's a fate that he's been moving toward, it seems to me, most of his life. I don't think you could have asked for three. This show has been done once before in the Berkshires at the Unicorn, also in a really strong production. I don't know that you could ask, though, for three better performers to do this play than the three that we had at Barrington Stage. It's an interesting ensemble, even though they never appeared together. But you still have this sense of three actors working really marvelously and painfully. These characters endure so much pain and agony over the course of their lives. And I'm not sure that any of them come to a reconciliation with themselves over the unfinished business that's left behind. Friel his language is just extraordinary. It's a really demanding play, and I don't know how much you can really dig out of it in just one performance of it. It's just such a rich and layered piece of work, and yet to sit through it a second time also asks a great deal.
I have to agree with Jeffrey. I did see it twice. I had a class here in July who we had scheduled them to see Faith Healer. And I had to teach it before I saw it this time. I have seen it before and I've read it. It's a fascinating piece. I don't know what your friend's question was, Naomi, but the play has confused a lot of people a lot of the time. Being 3 lengthy monologues followed by a 4th shorter monologue is a difficult form for a play. I don't like monologue plays, but I do like Faith Healer a great deal. I think it's beautifully written. And I think Julianne Boyd did a very excellent job directing it. The biggest problem I had was several members of my class on the Wednesday of that week said to me they didn't like the play. They wished they could have left after the first act. They were horribly, horribly unprepared for the topic of the play, of the death of a baby. It really bothered them no end. And several people did not understand the ending of the play. They didn't know whether the Faith Healer himself, who delivers the last monologue, is alive or dead, what he's reflecting on, and why he's back talking about the same things again, but from a slightly different perspective. I find that one of the more intriguing aspects of the play.
Anyone else see it and want to comment? Jeannie, did you get a chance to see it?
Did get to see it. I was just totally taken in by the performances and the directing. I felt I wanted to Gretchen Egolf was when she finished her section of the play, I just thought it was perfect. And Mark Dole, the same thing, that they didn't miss any part of it. So I thought the direction was fine. But I also had problems with the play. And part of that is that I have directed Molly Sweeney, also by Brian Friel, also a monologue play, which is, to me, a much more satisfying play in the sense that it has a much greater arc. You do know where it's going and you do know where it ends up. And it's also a drama that might not end as well as you go where you want it to go, but it's a much more engaging play as far as being able to engage with the characters. This play, I could not engage with the main character. And I think it was because he was, it's like philosophy. There was no right answer. There was, it could be this, it could be that. And how much of his own awareness of who he was and what he was constantly changing. And I found that difficult to connect with. The other 2 characters I connected with very well. And really a fantastic accomplishment to do as well with a very difficult script.
Someone asked the question about commenting on the title. Where does the title come from? Macey, did you get a chance to see the play?
I saw the play, not review it, but I saw it, and we were mesmerized by it. From the opening moment, we were just caught up. And the night that we saw it, the audience was rapt. There was not a cough, nothing. I've loved the 3 actors. I've seen a lot of work of that. Well, Gretchen is not here as much as she used to be. But I've seen them, and every time I see them, I have to watch them. I have to look at them. And yes, Julianne, as usual, did a wonderful job in directing. And I thought the ending was very interesting because, as Jeff pointed out, you did not know which way it was going or what was going to be actually happening. And although it was a little bit unsatisfying at the end, it's what the end should have been.
Well, that's right. I think now what I'd like to do is go back to sort of the beginning. I know that
Naomi, I'm not sure. I'm sorry. I saw that you did see one chat question. Did you see the other one about how do you explain the death of the protagonist? There was a question in chat about that. The question is about the ending. How do we explain the death of the protagonist?
Well, I can tell you how my husband had explained it to him last night, the crucifixion. But does anyone have another thought?
I think it's a willing a willing crucifixion. I think he walks out into that yard knowing full well the fate that's awaiting him. And he does this deliberately for his own salvation, for punishment, for I think a whole variety of reasons. I've always felt that about the play. He's a really, really difficult character. I mean, Friel really challenges us in so many ways in this play, as he does with a lot of his plays. And this character is such, I mean, what is it that holds these other two people to him for all of the abuse that he throws at them in a variety of ways, and the abuse that he throws at himself? But that's always been my feeling about the ending, that this is a very deliberate act on his part, that he's walking toward his fate, his death.
That was part of the discussion last night. Thank you very much. What I'd like to do now is sort of backtrack and go back to each one of you talking about some of the highlights of your season. I'm not going to say the best, but rather one or two or three of the plays. Also, I'd like you to start. I know that Jeff's first play was when he was 4 at Oklahoma. I would like to know, what is the first play? Everyone seems to remember the first play. I remember the first play that I saw. It was Call Me Madam with Ethel Merman. I was frightened out of my mind. She was so scary. She was more intimidating than the worst clown. So let's say, Macey, what was your first play and what was the highlight of your season?
Okay, my first play, I saw it when I was in my teens. My family did not go to theater. Anyway, the first play that I saw was a touring production of Carousel. If you remember Charles Coburn, he was the star keeper. And I've loved that show ever since. The production at Lincoln Center a number of years ago, I thought that was absolutely wonderful. Michael Hayden and Sally Murphy. In fact, I'm playing it on in my car right now. It's just something that has stayed with me forever. So,
second is more important than the first girlfriend, right? The first play.
Not quite. The highlight for me was actually, it's okay. I'll throw out a couple of things. Primarily, they come from the same place. Sharon Playhouse did Something Rotten, which I had never seen before, knew nothing about it. The production values, the choreography was fantastic. The performers just brought you right in, and you had to have a wonderful time. You had to laugh. You had to catch the satire. It was just a treat. And then they did Oliver. Now, I'm sure you are aware that the last weekend of Oliver was called off because it was COVID running rampant through the cast. And I directed Oliver. It's a very dark show. And there were a lot of people who brought young children there who should not have been there. But again, the production numbers were wonderful. The featured actors, the guy who played Fagin was absolutely fantastic. Just loved him. I love the production. I just found that it was, again, very involving. The direction was terrific. Those are two musicals. There were a number of straight plays I loved, almost all of them actually, that I saw.
You know, it's great. I know that Macey lives South County and has been a strong supporter of the Sharon Theater. I don't know if Peter, Jeff, or Jeannie get to Sharon.
I do.
Of course. Yeah. And did you have any? Did you see the two productions that Macey was talking about by any chance?
I didn't see Oliver because it was canceled the weekend I was supposed to go. I did see Something Rotten, which is one of my favorite musicals. It was the 6th production of the show that I've seen, and Sharon did an extraordinarily good job. I was very pleased.
And someone just stood and said they did one in Albany as well.
They did, which I didn't get to, at the Park Playhouse.
Yes, it's Macey's has someone who's on who he directed years ago, and she just thought that the Albany production was one of the better things she's seen in a long time.
Well, that's good to know.
So Jeff, would you like to comment on your surprises, delights, and disappointments of the season?
Yeah. Disappointments means that you had expectations of something and they fell short. And I don't know. Well, let me start with the ones that really caught me by surprise and really pleased me. I would say for me, Circle Mirror Transformation just knocked it out of the ballpark. I'd not seen that play before. And I was just so impressed both by the writing, which is just an extraordinary piece of playwriting. And this was an ensemble I mean, this is just a perfect ensemble of actors and playwright and director. It's just in fact, I went back to see it a second time. I would say that was a surprise because even though I had read the script, I really didn't know what to expect. Although knowing who was in the cast and who was directing it, I did have expectations and they were more than met. I was also blown away and I guess surprised by Jersey Boys at Mac Hayden Theater. I'd missed the national tour at Proctor's. I missed it when the Rep did it in Albany last summer. And I just thought this production, again, was beyond anything that I had anticipated or expected. In fact, I just sat there and I've directed and I've acted and I've interviewed directors. And I sat there and watched this production and I thought, how did John Saunders do this? I mean, the whole conception of the production, all of it. I was also taken by Dear Jack, Dear Louise. Call me a softie, call me a romantic. This was just a really lovely, sweet, delicate play, beautifully performed. And it was interesting to see Zoya Martin later on in the summer in the otherwise crazy staged reading of Hamlet, which was not for review, but I went just to see it. And here she was as Ophelia. And I thought, boy, if they ever do anyone, I mean, she'd be a beautiful, beautiful Ophelia. But again, this was a perfect combination of two actors, a good play, good direction, and I think really, really nice use of the outdoor Rose Garden Theater. I was also taken by Photograph 51, I think almost more by Rebecca Brookshire's performance. Cabaret fascinated me. It's a show that I've had a love-hate relationship with for the longest time, as I have with Candor and Ebb, period. But I think Alan just challenged us. This was not your grandfather and grandmother's cabaret. He took a lot of chances with this. And in many ways, it's a cabaret, the only cabaret that for me made any kind of sense. It's the first time I've seen the role of Clifford Bradshaw played with depth and dimension. It's a role I've always felt is among the most thankless male roles in American musical theater. But this time it really worked. And it was a really thoughtful production. I know from conversations I've had with people had either a love or hate relationship with this production. I was just fascinated by it. The big question in my mind for the summer, oh, God love them because their minds and hearts are really in a good place, and that's Great Barrington Public Theater, who champion the work of local playwrights, champion the work of local actors and directors. And yet, for me, fall short. And then there was, for me, the big question of the Williamstown Theater Festival this summer. My feeling, and I actually said this to Jenny Gersten in an offhand conversation, it feels to me better that they did what they did that they had a presence this summer than no presence whatsoever. I don't believe this is the model that Williamstown wants to adopt for the future, but I think for any theater to go dark, especially a theater like that, even for one summer, runs a huge risk. Coming back is challenging. I did go to the play readings. Again, they were not open for review. I just went out of interest. The physical setup was terrific. The quality of the plays and the readings was Three Sisters, even with that great cast, was a snore fest. And I was also wrestling with On Cedar Street. I had read the book. The musical is a huge departure from the book, almost to the point that the plot device that gets everything started, this widow asking her widower neighbor to share her bed at night companionably, almost made no sense in the way that this musical was structured. And so looking at this show as a critic, I wrestled with the issue of how to review this. Do I review this just to look at it for what it is within that context of what the playwrights and the creative team decided to do with it? How much do I take into account the fact that it's a really, really radical departure from the book in so many ways? I wound up somewhere in between, and I think if I had to do it all over again, I would probably rewrite that review, not to change my opinion of it, but to make clearer what I think the issues were with that.
We're only 50% through the critics, but no one has mentioned Fences. But Jeannie, what is?
Thank you for saying that, because that actually floated to the top of my list.
I'm sorry?
Fences actually was among the top of my list for favorites, and Dear Jack, Dear Louise, which I thought was just totally charming. It is so good to see actors who have charm and can bring that to the stage. But Fences, of course, it's a play that's been around for many years, the great August Wilson's words, but this cast was just top-notch. They, the design, the directing, the cast, the script, all work together for just a really memorable theater. And when I don't know if my fellow critics have this, but I find that after about 3 weeks of seeing plays on end, people say, oh, what did you see? I can't even remember the name of them. But Fences is certainly at the top. And Dear Jack, Dear Louise, particularly for comedy, it just was better. I thought it worked well in the outside venue. I would love to have seen it, though, in their small theater. Just because there were some challenges from weather and things like that. Although some friends of mine saw it during a rainstorm under a tent, and they loved it too, which shows you how resilient both the actors and the cast were. So yes, I wanted to cite Ella Joyce as Rose, Ranny as Troy, and Brian D. Coates as Gabriel. It was an outstanding cast for Fences all the way across, but particularly Coates's last speech as Gabriel, as this damaged man with all the joy and hope that brings, was just a beautiful, beautiful moment on the stage. So Naomi, were you asking me about my entire season, or did you specifically want to know about the top choices?
Well, I think for the first roundabout, I wanted to hear all of your top choices, and then you can discuss and sort of counter of what plays that you excited, what had disappointed you, and what had done the reverse that really enticed you.
Just want to reiterate what Jeff said. Photograph 51 was such intelligent writing, such a marvelous, marvelous performance by Rebecca Brookshire, totally engaging to me, even though not particularly a subject I was terribly interested in, but I was for the time I was in the theater. Golda's Balcony was an extremely well done tour de force performance by Annette Miller as Golda Meir. And one-person shows are very difficult for, they often don't have an arc or a crisis, but this play does, and it was excellent. And just as top favorites, $1 Million Quartet that came into, it was on tour, came into the Colonial, just to see Billy Root as Jerry Lee Lewis was unforgettable. So those are my tops. I'll come back to the surprises and disappointments and so forth after others get to speak.
Excellent. Thank you, Jeannie. Peter.
I have to agree in part with just about everybody who's spoken. Fences was a fascinating production. It's the first time I've seen a production of it where the house was beautiful. It's supposed to be kind of shabby and run down. But the fact that the porch was painted a glorious fire engine red and was scrupulously kept gave the play an interesting aspect that I've never seen before. The pride of home, which is not typical in Fences, but I thought it worked brilliantly.
Yes.
That no matter what else could go wrong, there was a sort of neighborhood pride in the way the place looked. You could see that the walls of the house were not in the best shape, that the interior was not in the best shape, but that glorious red porch just sort of set everything else off. I was thrilled with Something Rotten. As I said earlier, I've seen 6 productions of it, and this was one of the finest. Cabaret was a very curious piece for me. I loved it. I saw the original production of it 6 times. My friend Lada Lenya was in it, and she gave a brilliant, brilliant performance as Frau Schneider. The production here bothered a lot of my friends. One woman who is fairly knowledgeable about theater and goes very often and has gone most of her life talked to me about it and said she was very disturbed by the production, that she spent the first half hour trying to decide who was a girl and who was a boy. And I said, if you had to think about that aspect of it, you were not involved in the show. You really weren't getting it, that's not an important issue. That Berlin in 1930 was renowned for its intersexualities. And I thought Alan portrayed that very well by just putting people out there. There was no explanation, there was no excuse, there was no rationale. They were just there, doing their thing, being who they were. And that was a brilliant aspect of that production. It was a good cast. It was a very good cast. And I agree with Jeff. The hero of the show was unusually well played. The actor gave a depth of meaning to his decisions and his rationales and his feelings that I've never really seen before. And I've seen a lot of productions of Cabaret. It was really well done. I also loved The Happiest Man on Earth, a one-man show about a Holocaust survivor, which was unusual in its joy and in its eagerness for life. I really thought it was extraordinarily well done. I liked it a lot. It's coming back. I probably will see it again, only because I want to, not because I have to review it again, thank goodness. But it was an interesting piece. There were a lot of interesting shows this year. A special highlight for me was Dorset Theatre Festival's production of the Thanksgiving play, their last show, which unfortunately closed early due to COVID. It's been a problem for a lot of things this summer. COVID has been taking its toll on a lot of theaters. You heard about Sharon Playhouse and the early closing of Oliver, which kept me from seeing it. The last play at the Machayden, The Marvelous Wonderettes, only played one of its 3 weeks because COVID has closed it. And it's unfortunate that this resurgence of COVID is taking its toll in this way on theater. And it isn't necessarily the cast, thank God, but often the crew. At the Macadam, it was the crew. At Dorset, it was also the crew. But, you know, as things go, we're so busy constantly seeing theater. I saw a production of Bright Star, the Steve Martin, Edie Brickell musical, just last week at the Majestic Theater in West Springfield. And it's a show that is so predictable that there's no intrigue in the plot, at least not for me. When the story's aspect is finally revealed in the second act, about a third of the audience gasped with surprise, which surprised me. Because I've read the Bible, I've heard the story of Moses, I knew what was going to happen. So there was no real surprise, but the show was charming and fun and certainly worth seeing. And it's been that way throughout the season. Everything has been worth seeing.
The season has been, I think all of us are thrilled, you know, to have theater back again. And I'm sure that you as critics are so happy because it keeps you occupied and going to theater, and that we all. I just wanted to say one little thing about Cabaret, which obviously was early in the season, and I had seen Joel Grey, I had seen Alan Cummings in it, and Alan himself had said that he was doing it because he had done it in Washington. He wanted to start his season here with something that he knew very well. But I thought he did a brilliant job. I don't know who the people were who were disturbed and looking. I thought it was brilliant in the seamless way. It didn't matter if it was a man or a woman, if it was white or black, but without being didactic, it just showed it didn't matter. I mean, it was the character. So my applause to him, and I thought it was a very good season. Anyway, Macey has something.
Yeah, about Cabaret. I was repulsed by it. I hated it from the very beginning.
Oh, goody, we have drama now.
Joel Grey and Alan Cumming, they invited you in with a smile and a wink and a piece of whimsy. And this guy, this MC, was lascivious from the beginning, smacking his lips, leering, pelvic thrusts. The most of the production numbers were featured with pelvic thrusts. I've directed the show, and I've never, in all the musicals I've seen, I've never seen a number staged where the soloist was upstage and the chorus was in front of her so you could not see her. And when I read the play, when I directed the play, I went through the script, of course, and I didn't see anything about bare backsides. I thought that was unnecessary. The entr'acte, they were ensemble entertaining in the aisles. I was in the first row. And in order for me to see that, I had to crane my neck or stand up. If I had paid for the tickets, I would have been offended. And I have to disagree somewhat with Peter and Jeff about Cliff Bradshaw. I was not as involved with him as obviously you were. I was much more involved with Schneider and Schultz. I thought there was much more subtlety and nuance in theirs. Now, as a director and an artistic director, I believe it is a cast's or a company's responsibility to fulfill the playwright's intentions. When I was running a theater on Long Island, we were doing One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. We brought in an outside director, and if you know the play, Chief Broadbent has a number of monologues which carry the themes of the play. This director cut the monologues. You could tell the story, but you denied the author's intentions. And I think that's what happened here.
Thank you very much, Macey. I think it's great to hear. I think a different view, and it makes people think. Shakespeare's been complaining about people changing his plays for a long time, whether they're an opera. By the way, speaking of plays, I just wanted to say the Berkshire Opera put on a wonderful bohème this year. I don't know, most of you aren't doing the. I have to do one thing, which I neglected to do. I better identify that Jeannie and Macey work for the Berkshire blog, the stage. Peter Bergman's reviews are found in Berkshire Edge, and Jeff Borak, of course, he's been with it for 1984, been in the Berkshire Eagle. So,
Naomi, before you go on to another subject, somebody just wanted to know about cabaret. Does anyone else get tired of having the music and dance numbers broken by applause? Find that this interrupts the flow of the play.
Are they talking about music applauding at the end of the number or in the middle of it?
Oh, it must be in the middle or
at the end, probably.
The music and dance number is broken by applause.
I assume that
nobody found it.
The audience would applaud and then it goes on. Is yeah, at the end of each number. Does anyone have any strong feelings on that?
I think applause is necessary and accepted. The cast generally likes it.
Mm-hmm.
What people have forgotten is that cabaret is not a through composed show. In a through composed show like Hamilton, it can be somewhat disruptive to have applause at the end of a piece of music when the music is going to literally just continue. It's not the case with cabaret. So no, I don't think it was a problem at all.
You know, it's interesting. I was thinking at Tanglewood, people new to the concerts might applaud after the first movement. And it's interesting to watch how the conductor and the musicians treat that. They're usually very supportive of people who are there for the first time and don't know that you wait. But
Alan told me, and it showed in the production, that his approach to cabaret was to pace the second act in a way that it would not permit audience applause at the end of the numbers. His intention in the second act, more than the first, particularly in the second act, because of the way he conceived the show, was to have it run. His timing, his rhythm, his intention there was to have it run in a way that it would not give audiences a chance to applaud at the end of the numbers. He wanted them really tightly integrated into the dramatic narrative of it, and I think he accomplished that. It was a really interesting interesting approach, I thought.
Yeah.
Mention that I just saw the production of the storytelling and concert pianist performer Hershey Felder is his name.
Beethoven.
And the one of the people told me before that, because she had seen it before, she was upset by the fact that they didn't clap after each of his renditions of this beautiful. He's a marvelous pianist and he's playing Beethoven on a Steinway, but it was structured as part of the storytelling, and it would have been. It didn't feel right to clap. Nobody clapped, but we got to the end of the play, and there was this at the end. Just this gas, the whole audience was so with it. They were totally caught into it, and having applause there. And directors do try to either make that happen or not make that happen according to the material.
The night that I saw Beethoven, there was some scattered applause at moments after his playing, and it was so disruptive. It felt to me, because it's just such a tightly conceived theater music piece. And I agree with you. It's just not, it's not structured to invite, but it felt to me this was again a case of where audiences were applauding between movements at a concert. It was very disruptive.
So what do you think, I'd like to hear from you as to what advice, and someone did raise it from the audience, to artistic directors for the next season. Is there something as a whole season this year that you felt, was it too repetitive, or were there things, not enough new things, or too many new things And how do you think we're going to go forward with regional theater for next year? And is any advice you wanted to give any of the theaters? Can we start with you, Peter, as you were last before?
Well, I do think that theaters have a responsibility to bring their audiences into the pieces that they are coming to see. If they don't want you to applaud after individual numbers, they could put a one-sentence line in the program saying, please hold your applause till the end of the act, which would be a big help. That's one thing. This year, we had some thematic work in the Berkshires. There were at least 3 plays about older couples reuniting for the first time in a long time. They were incidental and accidental, but the themes seemed to run through the season in 3 different theaters. Who knows what will happen next year? There are a lot of interesting pieces out there that are not done very frequently that may show up. People have a slight fear of the unknown. I was happy to see so many world premieres this year, to see new plays that I'd never heard of and never seen, that nobody had ever seen, and it's still going on. We've got another one on Sunday at Shakespeare and Company. But it would be kind of good if some of the pieces that are less frequently performed could get picked up. I was a little surprised at the season at the Macey. Almost everything was standard work. I will say that John Saunders, who is brilliant, I agree with Jeannie, or with Jeff, I forget who said it, but I don't like The Sound of Music. I've never liked The Sound of Music. John Saunders' production of The Sound of Music was revelatory, and I enjoyed it immensely. I didn't expect to. But it's that kind of thing where the creativity of a really good director can change your feeling about a work. Jersey Boys I saw for the 5th time this year at the Macey, and it never fails as a show. It is a fascinating story. The music is fun and good and familiar, and there is something wonderful about watching these people's relationships grow and play out. I hope that we can continue doing theater that means something, whether it be musicals or dramas or comedies, but theater that means something, not just old-fashioned summer entertainment,
So
which I frankly don't miss.
Mm-hmm. What?
Go ahead.
Peter, I'm glad you raised the issue of the Macey season, because the way John structured this season and the way he's likely to structure next season as well is because last season they took a chance on a couple musicals and they took a huge, huge hit at the box office. And John said to me, he said, I'm going to have to do at least one more season like this before I feel we can take a chance again. And this is an issue that, if you've been reading the stories about what's been happening to the not-for-profit theaters nationally, and the difficulty they're having in bringing audiences back, and it's for a variety of reasons, and one of them is that audiences are looking for lighter material, actually. And I think theaters is caught in a difficult situation. You want to entertain your audiences on the one hand. On the other, you want to bring them material that is thoughtful, that reflects on issues that are happening around us, that connect to us in some way. And I think audiences here actually like being part of the process of seeing a brand new play. From what I understand, on Cedar Street, for instance, was in the Unicorn, but they sold out pretty much the whole run. I think audiences are interested in all of that.
You're absolutely right, Jeff. And I spoke to the playwright of On Cedar Street a couple of times about the show. She had gotten permission from the widow of the novelist to make the changes that she made and bring it to a happy conclusion, that it was not her decision alone, but came directly from the source of the origination of the
Mhm.
story. And I thought that was an interesting thing to know.
Mhm.
Thank you. I think there is a challenge, and I have always been a proponent of regional theaters doing new work, because if they didn't do new work, who was going to? It's too expensive to be risky on Broadway, so that they do. But then there is that split of doing something issues versus entertainment, and it's hard to do an issue play that also is satisfying, because you think if you want to see the issue, you could always read the newspaper and be disappointed and be distressed. But for the theater to present it in a way that is provocative and interesting is quite a challenge, and I'm all for it. Anyway, I think Macey was waving. Yes, you wanted to say something.
I want to say something. We've not talked very much about some of the smaller theaters. Jeff referred to some stuff that Chester did, a circle mirror transformation, which was wonderful. And by the way, Andy Baker, who wrote that, has another play being done off Broadway relatively
I
soon.
think that play is going to New York, off Broadway.
Her play. Yeah.
Yes.
But Chester, as you know, have new co-artistic directors, a couple, James Barry and Tara Franklin, and I think their selection of work this year, the 4 shows, were entrancing, challenging, thoughtful, insightful. The performances were, corny expression, top notch. The same thing goes for Bridge Street. The kinds of things they do, you do not commonly see in the big theaters up north. Occasionally you do, but they thrive, or they build their reputations on these offbeat works. They very seldom do a play from Broadway, occasionally from off Broadway, although Bridge Street does a classic every year. This year they're doing Glass Menagerie. 2 years ago they did a fantastic version of Long Day's Journey. And then there's the Ankrum Opera House. They did not do a formal production this year. They did a thing called Plein Air plays, where they did 3 one-act plays and 3 different outdoor locations. And you had to drive from place to place. And that was intriguing. 3 very interesting works. I think the smaller theaters do a lot of good work, and I think they need more attention.
I agree with you. We've been trying to get in Berkshire previews. I did have the new Chester group on, and I also always have the Bridge, because those 2 guys are just wonderful. They are in and of themselves entertaining. But I usually just have room for 8 artistic directors, so it's a challenge. Yes.
I want to throw Sharon Playhouse in there too, small theaters. They're much larger, but with their budget, they're in the same kind of situation.
Great.
I'd like to just also say a word about Great Barrington Public Theater, because they are devoted to new work and have really stepped out there, sometimes with wonderful success, and sometimes with plays that are going to need to go back and be reworked. And but I really was taken by Just Another Day. This is by Dan Lauria, who also performed the role in it. Just about 2 people who they're at an institution where people are losing their memories, and they and the couple comes. It's that couple who meet again. Maybe they've known each other. Maybe they are a couple. It gets clearer as you go through the play. But it was just beautifully produced and beautifully acted. They also did another 2-person play, Off Peak. Again, a couple coming together. That one didn't work as well for me, and that's the nature of new plays, because you have to have the laboratory situation to put it in front of an audience to really see how it goes, and they learn from that, and very often the play is improved. I saw a play at Dorset Theater Festival, Ms. Holmes and Ms. Watson Apartment 2B, which is by Kate Hamill, who has done so many of the Jane Austen pieces and brought them into a 20th century perspective. And it was great, but the first act was way too long. And that's the type of thing that I think, particularly post-COVID, is very difficult. I went to several shows that were 2.5 hours long or 2 hours without intermission. And I don't know, I'm hoping that's not going to be a trend as we're looking forward. I hope that, that they will get to the point sooner.
No, that's, yes, the people of a certain age are often now saying, oh, the first act too long, second act too long. I guess we have to have dinner, have 90 minutes and out. I wonder, I have not talked to I remember Julie Boyd with Barrington Stage often felt that she had to have one blockbuster musical in order to make sure that the bottom line was covered, and that she knew she could sell out a musical, and which would allow her to do smaller plays or more provocative or more controversial plays. So I'm wondering if any of you have heard from the artistic directors how their season went economically. Were the audiences coming out? Did they get it? Were they able to sell enough tickets to cover it, or did they have a disappointing economic season? Or don't they talk that way? Jeff mentioned that with Williamstown, that he shared their view of having at least something going on. But you've all talked to the artistic directors. Is there any news you can share with us?
I can tell you this: a lot of theaters have had sold out productions, which is unusual, even in the good seasons before COVID, to have an entire run of a play basically sold out. We've seen a lot of that this year. And that's good for the theater.
Yes, that's interesting. Yes, I'm aware of that. People wanting to get tickets and couldn't, so that's good. Because we could go to the theater and the theaters could be dying for lack of money. So, Jeff, did you hear anything?
Yeah, I was going to say with regard to that, sellouts. One theater that I spoke to mentioned their single ticket sales this year were up over last year. And another theater that I spoke to said that so far they're running a little bit ahead of where they were last year. The issue, though, is especially with the theaters with single ticket sales, season ticket sales are down, and donors are not as reliable as they used to be in terms of that they're giving or the numbers of donors. And that's really the more troubling issue, I think, bodies in the seats to see the show. And so it is meaningful to have sold out performances and an increase in single ticket sales. But the real bread and butter for not-for-profits is season tickets and donors. And there is where the theaters are having some concern.
And I think
that's partially what affected the Theater Barn in New Lebanon. Their drop-off of their season subscribers was overwhelming, and they could not sustain a full season.
And that's interesting on the donors, because I remember when Alan Burrows was on my show that he talked about building that amphitheater in 3 months, but he also said it was all paid for, that donors came out of the woodworks, and people wanted to support some of the artistic directors who were doing everything they possibly could to put on theater, do it in the outdoors or tents, because we were all hungry for the. Anyway, Jeannie, you had something you wanted to say, too.
Yes, maybe it's because I directed a show up in Schenectady, and kind of being back in, the director's shoes again, I picked up on some vibes around this. My feeling is that COVID has changed us, the world has changed the world. In many cases, lack of commitment. That's, a season ticket is committing.
Exactly.
Saying, I'm going to be there for all of this. And I think the world seems a little, we got a big political election coming up soon. There are lots of things that make us feel kind of not grounded. And you need that kind of commitment, and I'm going to stay through and see it through to have that happen. I'm hoping that will wane as hopefully life will even out a bit, and that the theater will be able to weather it. And that's the real question, is how these theaters can get through. They got through COVID. They had a lot of support. They got to do new buildings or renovate or augment their buildings or their heating system or air conditioning system, and that money's done. So now is the tough part. Now is going forward and keeping it going until the world can normalize in some way.
Yeah, that's all kinds of crazy things that happen. Yes, COVID, and then suddenly shows are closed down because it's the crew or the actor. Jacob's Pillow fire burnt down a theater, and I'm planning a trip to Morocco. It looks what happened to the earthquake, and supposed to be going in October. The world is very unruly these days. Macey, you had something you wanted to say.
No,
I thought you put your hand. So I would like to go to do that, what I think Ronald Reagan used to call the vision thing. That think of more of what you want to see in the next 2 years, other than well, we certainly want the health things. Have you been telling any artistic directors what you would like? Ray?
Can we hold on 1 second?
Sure.
People have a couple of plays in chat that they would like to know. If you, I don't think that you mentioned them. Somebody wanted to know about Photograph 51.
Oh yes, I saw Carol. Peter, I think, mentioned it. Someone mentioned, one person mentioned.
Jeff did.
Oh, okay.
I did.
Okay.
Okay.
Anyone?
And then somebody else said The Smile of Her by Christine Lady. And then Blues for an Alabama Sky, which I saw. I thought that was wonderful.
Yeah, Blues. We saw that years ago at the Unicorn, and then again. So, did anyone want to say anything about Photograph 51 first? Is that?
it was wonderful.
Oh,
To watch it. It was
perfect sentence, basically.
it demanded your attention. The subject matter was very contemporary. You had to think your way through it while you let your emotions work. It was a wonderful experience. And I understand the Christine Lottie thing was not to be reviewed.
Oh. Okay.
I saw it last year when they did it as a reading. So since I had seen it, I didn't go back, but the reading was wonderful. So I expect it was probably quite good.
I was at the opening performance of The Smile of Her. In fascinating piece, very self-oriented, written and performed by Christine Lottie about her years growing up and her early years of her career. People I know objected to the language in the play, the attitude of the play. It wasn't to be reviewed, but I did write a short piece about it, and I thought it was worth seeing. I don't know that it's a great piece, but it's certainly an interesting self-examination of what went right and what went wrong in an actress's life.
And Blues for an Alabama Sky. Anyone have a comment on that?
Oh God, yes.
Okay.
It's a wonderful play. It's a wonderful play. It was, I thought, a rather mediocre production. For the director to take two people from Savannah, Georgia, living in Harlem, and a visitor from rustic Alabama, and have them speak with exactly the same standard stage Black accent was so wrong. There was no differentiation in the characters. The play is partially about the obsession with an American actress who's made it big in Paris. There is supposed to be a large portrait of her in his apartment, and instead there was a basically white framed picture of the actress in the distance. Considering the fact that there are thousands of major portraits of her, to not use one And also the set was so completely out of focus. An enormous room downstage left and an apartment across the hall that was the size literally of your kitchen, Naomi, in which 3 people could not easily fit for their scene. I thought was just so wrong. I felt odd that Barrington Stage, with Alan Paul in charge, could permit a production that did not function for the play. Was totally wrong and a major mistake.
Did you
Did a disservice to the play.
Did you have any discussion with Alan after that?
I have.
Oh, but not at Liberty. Okay.
I saw another play, and going back to something that Jeannie said, the first act was too long, primarily because it was repetitive and it did not go anyplace. Second act worked better, it was much tighter, but the first act, it was snooze time.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. I haven't heard before. I think Jeff used it too. Snooze time for a very sophisticated way of reviewing theater. I love it.
It's snore time.
Yeah. Before we lose Alabama Sky, though, somebody wants to know: did you see a connection between Alabama Sky and Cabaret? Anybody?
Oh yeah. The basic connection was the use of the phrase Kit Kat Club.
Oh.
In Alabama Sky, they are going off to a club in Harlem called the Kit Kat Club, and Cabaret is set basically in the Kit Kat Club in Berlin. But there's really no connection.
Okay.
Ray, do you have anything else that?
I do. Oh, somebody wanted to know if anybody saw To Kill a Mockingbird at the Bushnell, and what did you think?
I saw it at Proctor's and I liked it very much.
Okay.
Same production.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
And I think you're all going to talk about this maybe, but I'm just going to give you these 3 things because you're probably going to talk about these things. Somebody wants to know if you have any insights into the future of Williamstown Theater Festival. Also, with your broad perspectives, where do you see the future of regional theater going? Will audiences and economics come back to historical levels? I mean, we kind of touched on that a little bit. And what advice would you give to the artistic directors for next season? And then I think I'm good for a while, okay? So you guys talk.
Jeff, you're shaking your head. You're not giving any advice to the artistic directors?
No, I'm not. The same that I would not suggest, gee, have you ever thought of doing this play? I honestly don't think that's our responsibility or our job. And I have to give a little story here. This is many years ago. I got into this conversation with someone because I was thinking about one of the theaters in particular. And I said to them, have you guys ever thought of doing, and I won't mention the play, because I was thinking of plays that they could do that might fit in with their general mission. And they said to me, no. And then about a couple of weeks later, this person came up to me and said, boy, your ears should have been burning this morning. I said, why? He said, well, we had a board meeting last night. We were choosing the plays for next season. And we decided to do hum, and somebody said we should do that play because you recommended that we do it. They did it that summer. It turned out to be a spectacular production. I wrote a rave review of it. They revived it over 2 more seasons, not successively. And I thought, boy, Jeff, here's a lesson learned. Just keep your mouth shut. I mean, what if, for example, you hated the show and you had written it, and then, you know, there would have been all of this, well, Jeff thought we should do this show and he didn't. I just don't think it's our place to be in that position. I think we can certainly write in columns think pieces about theater, and generally, I know last summer I just felt for once, I would like to see a play where I can just kick back and relax and not have to write something profound, not just this past season, but it seemed to me last summer we had one play after another that dealt with really serious social issues, or directors took those turns with material that was originally presented another way. And I think people do want to, including us, just want to have a night or two where we can just sit back and relax and laugh, or deal with an Agatha Christie, for example, where you really can't write a whole lot. But that's about as far as I would go. I just don't think it's our place to do that.
But you can't take success for an answer. You recommended the play, they did, it was a great success, and
no, and I shouldn't have even opened my mouth.
No.
Even then, just shouldn't.
But it worked so well. But you have 5,000 years of despair in your background that.
Well, it worked well, but not because of me. It had, it was just the right director and the right cast. It just happened to work out well. But I was stunned that it was there, and I was particularly upset that somebody said that they did it because I thought they should do it, and that just shouldn't be the case.
I'd like to read you a quote from about this from Harold Clurman's book, The Divine Pastime. He said, "I am convinced that a critic of contemporary effort owes it to his job to be responsible to everyone in the theater, the audience to begin with, as well as to the dramatists, actors, directors, designers. In doing this, he becomes responsible to the theater as a whole." So.
He's absolutely right. The Mac-Hayden Theater every year in their last 3 productions has a survey form. I'm holding it up so you can see it, in which they ask for your request for what you'd like to see. For 12 years, I wrote in the name of a musical that I'm very fond of and I've never actually seen on stage. And for 12 years, they have ignored it. And I assume they will continue to ignore it in the future. I think it's a pity. I'd love to see it. I understand that it's not something that is really required. They do ask their audiences, their paying audiences, for input. And the requests of those audiences often produces productions for the following year. But
you have a
for
platform
me, no.
now to announce what you want to be done. Maybe
Yes.
someone else will do it. Do you want to talk?
Sure, I will say that it is the Kurt Weill musical, One Touch of Venus. It's a very funny show with a fabulous score that most people do not know. They know the one big hit, Speak Low, and that's about it. But it's really filled with beautiful stuff, with lyrics by a fabulous poet and a book by a fabulous playwright. And the show just needs to be seen.
Yes, we did see it. My husband is here now telling me that I saw it. My memory is. Where did we see it?
You got me.
Oh, we're not remembering that.
That's okay.
But
Oh, I remember. We saw it in. It was not a full production. It was at Encores.
Oh, that's right. Encore in New York. You do know that? Yeah. That's great. So we have now, if it's done, we now have 3 critics or 4 critics now who are signed up to review it properly, right? Anyway, what else do we? Oh, yeah, Jeannie, go ahead.
You had asked, what we would say to the artistic directors. I would just like to commend them for bringing such diversity of theater again this summer. In this season, there's literally been something for everyone. I also was particularly pleased with Shakespeare and Company, which last year or another year it seemed a little more up and down. But Dear Jack, Dear Louise, Golda's Balcony, and then The Midsummer Night's Dream, which I know some of my colleagues probably found problematic, but I was really charmed by it. I was not prepared to enjoy it because I thought, you know, I've seen it. I have an idea of the way it ought to be done. But I felt he said it in the 1970s, the contemporary 1970s, incorporated Spanish and contemporary jargon. There was some really outstanding performance. Puck and Bottom particularly were just both marvelous. Some others not as successful. It was uneven, but still, I thought I remember getting through the first act, which I think was over an hour, and I thought that was 30 minutes. Always a good sign, when the time has just literally not passed for you in the theater. So I just want to commend the bravery of those companies doing new work that's harder to bring in an audience with, because it's an unknown factor. But that's what I had to say.
No, that's right. Also, the season is really not over. I mean, Shakespeare is opening a play on Sunday. I'm not sure what else is going. But all of you, if you could mention what that's coming up, so we could support theater for the next month or two. Is there, Peter? I know you go to, you work hard and go to all kinds of productions. Is there something that you're looking forward to in the next month or so that we may not know about?
I'm looking forward to Copenhagen at Berkshire Theatre Group, partly because of the company and partly because it's such a good play, and it's certainly worth seeing, and I look forward to that. The same day that it opens, Barrington Stage is opening a new play called English, which sounds absolutely wonderful, and I look forward to that. I was looking at the cast yesterday. I've never heard of anybody in it, and that in itself is intriguing.
And it's won some awards too, the English.
Yeah, the playwright, I think, won the Pulitzer.
Okay,
not for this play, but for an earlier piece. Curiously, I'm looking forward to seeing the Majestic Theater's production of The Importance of Being Earnest in December. I love the play. I've seen the play a lot. I can always see that in that play. And they have done such innovative work over the years with standard works. They did a brilliant Blithe Spirit by Noel Coward a couple of years ago, that I really am looking forward to seeing what they can pull off with Ernest.
Jeff, do you have some outlook for the next month or two?
Yeah, Hartford Stage and Theatre Works Hartford are opening in October, but the two plays that are in, it's going to be a really busy fall. For me, there are two plays that I'm looking forward to the most, and they're the ones that are just about to open. One, Lunar Eclipse, Donald Margulies' play.
Yes.
Partly because I am such a big fan of Donald Margulies' writing. He's an extraordinary playwright. And Copenhagen. I've never seen the play. I think it's timely. On paper, given the cast and given the director, I'm hoping for a really provocative, stimulating evening. And Lunar Eclipse, the same. I've read the script, and given the cast and the director and the playwright, I'm really, really, really hopeful.
Great. Yeah, we're seeing it also on Sunday. I think I'll probably see you all there. It was opening night.
Yes.
Macey, what does your next 2 months look like?
Well, it starts Friday night. Sharon Plaus is doing Our Town. One of my most favorite plays, one of the highlights of the American theater in my mind. Jane Kaczmarek from television and other areas is doing the stage manager. Actually, I've directed the play 3 times, and one time I used a female for stage manager, worked very well. And then they're also doing a play that I know very little about called Lifespan of a Fact. And Copenhagen, or Copenhagen if you wish. I've seen it. It's actually, it's an important play, and probably go see that. And then I think I mentioned it already that Bridge Street is doing Glass Menagerie, and I love Glass Menagerie. They put a good cast together, and Lee Strimbeck, whom you probably know, I believe, is doing Amanda. So that should be a special piece of work.
Great, thank you. And Jeannie?
Well, they already gave my list, except I have a couple of others. I did not get to see The Happiest Man, and I'm so glad they're bringing it back.
Yeah.
So I can see that. Kind of interested in Outside Mullingar at the Ghent. And I'm also I'm going to be reviewing Ordinary Days at Bridge Street, which sounds quite interesting as well. So you're right, Naomi, a lot is coming down the pike.
Yeah, it's exciting that now, particularly as we've moved here full time, I'm glad that we have things going in the fall. I also want to say that some of the plays, one of the offshoots of the Berkshire Previews, we have Ollie has a SIG, that is the special interest group of people who get together to read plays. And what we've been doing is setting up theater parties and having the group read the plays before, during, and after, in order to get more involved. And the timing in the plays is usually based on the calendar, because we'll have one a month, and so it's not exclusionary. But it's been very successful, and it also gives people who love theater and love plays an outlet. We just have a few minutes left. I would love if each of you could say, were you happy with the season? I mean, particularly after the last 2 years of the virus, were you thrilled to be back, or was it business as usual? Peter, can we start with you as a kind of just looking back at the whole season?
Sure. I mean, you keep saying that there was no season last year, but there was. It was a very good season last year. It was the year before, at the height of COVID, that really it was bad. What's been so good about this season has been the return of so much of the audience. They've really made a major difference to the work and the way the work could be conceived and presented. I was fortunate in January to direct a play for the first time in a long time. It was a play I've loved since 1962. And to everybody's surprise, being an unknown work by an author whose name doesn't really resonate with most contemporary audiences, it sold out. And it made a lot of money for the theater that produced it, and I was very proud and very pleased.
Which theater was it?
It was the Ghent Playhouse. The play was Invitation to a March by Arthur Lawrence.
Oh, yes, we went, of course.
Yes, you did.
Yeah, that was, no, you're absolutely right. There was a season last year. I was thinking that black cloud that was hanging over in the audience was not there. And I mean, because for the last 2 years, I've been congratulating all the artistic directors of what they did in order to bring theater. I mean, setting up in garages and in parking lots, and building, opening up tents and building theaters. I thought Alan Burroughs' building of a theater was really kind of quite remarkable. Jeff, how about you? What is your past reflection on this season? And
I think it was fun to be back in the theaters again and to see the theaters go at full tilt. It was a very diverse season. A quick note, I also saw the Christine Lottie play, and my question is, why? Even though it was a very brave performance. I also wish audiences would learn to keep their cell phones off, and I don't mean in terms of talking, I mean in terms of lighting up and looking at images. It's distracting. But on the whole, I've always thought this is just a great place to be a theater critic, because the programming is diverse. There's, for the most part, energy, and also for the most part, integrity. And I felt a lot of that spirit this summer. It was just good to be back at this level again. I miss the theater barn, I have to say that. And Old Castle Theater Company was absent from the theater scene this year. But on the whole, I think this is just a great place to see theater.
it is. It's also a great place to be on, just in general, of the outlets. A small aside, I mean, the Jacob's Pillow had a wonderful season for those of you who are interested in dance. It was sort of thrilling. And the opera, too. We're very fortunate. Macey, so Did you have a good season?
Yes, I had a good season. It was a joy to see so many people sitting in a theater. And I just liked almost everything that I saw, except that one show that we talked about that I was repulsed by. Otherwise, I thought it was a very entrancing, enthralling season.
That's great. And Jeannie, I'd particularly like to ask because Jeannie left a soft berth in the Midwest where she had a theater company and she was a professor and was seduced by the Berkshires and came and threw herself into the theater. So are you glad you did it?
Yes, 1,000 times yes. It is, at this point, you know, how much theater I can be involved in, you know, it changes each year and the world changes and your age changes. But I have to say, I feel like the luckiest person in the world to be here amidst this art. Some of it is, you know, to see classics I never got to see on the stage, whether it be, you know, Guys and Dolls or whatever. But to see new work and to see it at all the stages and to see and to meet and talk with I've loved being part of the critics group here, to be able to talk with the artistic directors, to be able to look ahead of what's coming and looking back on it. One of the things I really appreciate about this season, this summer, yes, we're back in the theater, but also it's not all one person or two person shows. They have started doing big works again, along with the smaller shows. But during COVID, everything got very small because you didn't want to have a large cast because they would catch COVID or whatever. And so that has really normalized in a way. But I think to be here and to have the opportunity, and I'm just going to put in a word for ushering because I was at one of the theaters, might have been Barrington, they made a plea for ushers before the show. They need, again, that's commitment, and a lot of the ushering crew is, you know, of a certain age, but I recommend that because you go, you get to usher or scan or work in the gift shop and get to see the show. But to be able to see so much theater, to have access to it, and to be able to afford it is wonderful.
No, that's right. I have something to say, but it's not particularly profound. I mean, because like Jeannie represents, she could take theater and go to China and give to each other.
Taiwan, not China.
Oh, you then you talk about the public theater, great actor, and Jim Frangione. When I contacted him to talk, he was in, of all strange places, the Atlas Mountains. And he said, yes, as soon as he gets back, he'll send me his bio. But one of you or both of you were doing Death of a Salesman. And think about it. Death of a Salesman in either Taiwan or Morocco. We know it's universal, but still to have it presented so dramatically blew me away. And we're hoping also some have, like Peter was saying, that he wasn't thrilled with some of the stuff from Great Barrington, but Frangione is doing new work, and we're delighted that he's supporting the local. But I don't know of any other group around the country or other place around the country that provides all the riches that we have here. So I too am a convert, a born and bred New Yorker who is now quite happy being a country girl here. Thank you. My husband is looking at me as if I'm crazy, but
No,
thank
not
you
at
all for your generosity. You're all so kind. When I call you and say, can you do this? You're all immediately responsive. And I know a lot of people were looking forward to it. More than 100 had signed up by last week. And I hope they all know. I'm going to repeat again where you all can be found. Peter Bergman is in the Berkshire Edge. Jeff Borak is the Eagle. Jeannie and Macey are both of the Broadway. I keep wanting to call it Broadway, the Berkshire.
Berkshire on Stage.
Yes, Berkshire on Stage. And to our dear friend Barbara Waldinger, who is doing God's work in New York, we thank her too. And Jesse, her husband, has a play on October 6th check the Ollie schedule. It's one day and it's a reading, and it's on women's suffrage. So we want to reward him for being a good patient. So thank you. I think it's noon. If anyone has anything, some suggestions for theaters that I have overlooked, I know that Macey thinks I overlooked Sharon, and he's right because of distance, but maybe we'll do it next year. Thank you all, and see you on Sunday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
You too. Yeah, stay healthy, everyone. Bye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.